Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about a power alliance for the classic Dune board game, the 2019 edition from Gale Force 9. And that alliance is one I call the Deplorable Alliance. It's one that exists between House Moritani and the Tleilaxu. And the reason that it's the Deplorable Alliance is because these are two fairly deplorable factions. The Moritani faction, as it says here on their little summary, you resort to terrorism. There it is. That is really their vibe. They're terrorists. And then the quote-unquote filthy Tleilaxu, they are loathed by all of the Imperium, despite the fact that they're needed for their golas and for their replacement eyes and what have you. It's just the idea of meddling with body parts and cloning, whatever. It makes everybody's skin crawl. And then, of course, there's the face dancers, which is really what makes them a hated and feared faction, both within the lore and within the Dune board game. So these two, they seem like they'd be a great pair. And in fact, they are. They make a very formidable alliance, and let's get into why that is. A lot of it has to do with what the Tleilaxu bring to any alliance, and that is reviving. Now, the Moritani have got this nice advantage in basic and advanced, and it's Duke Vidal. And Duke Vidal is a 6-strength leader with no traitor card, but you don't start with him. The Moritani don't start with them, but they have a special condition in which they can get him, and that is by being in at least 2 battles in strongholds. And this does not count any battles that they are having with House Ekaz. Duke Vidal is not going to get involved with the Moritani in that situation, but especially in a game where Ekaz is not in the game, this is the only way that they can get Duke Vidal into play, and if Duke Vidal is killed, the Moritani can't revive Duke Vidal. Only House Ekaz can revive him. Now, how does the Tleilaxu fit into that? Well, they can, in advanced anyway, they can revive Duke Vidal as a gola, and then they control Duke Vidal. But here's the rub. The Moritani Duke Vidal advantage clearly explains if he is not in the tanks, taking him from any faction currently controlling him. So, the Moritani, they use Duke Vidal, and if he gets killed, he goes to the tanks, where the Tleilaxu can revive him as a gola. But then if Moritani gets into 2 battles in strongholds, they're going to take Duke Vidal from the Tleilaxu. So it's a little kind of a backroom loophole way that they can keep reviving him, and that's going to be through the process of the Tleilaxu making him into a gola, and then the Moritani can take control of him. Now, they only get control of him that game turn, and then he is set aside, which means that if the Tleilaxu have made a gola of Duke Vidal and he is taken by House Moritani, he doesn't go back to the Tleilaxu if he survives that battle. He is set aside. And then it's going to be up to the Moritani to get into 2 battles in strongholds in order to get him back. So it is not without its bureaucracy, but there you have it, a 6-strength leader that cannot be called traitor. Can't be a face dancer either, which is nice, but if you're allied with the Tleilaxu, that's less of a concern. So that's one of the big things. Another one is the assassinate leaders advantage, and this is how these 2 factions are both working with the traitor deck, which normally, after everyone's selected their traitors, that's it. It's set aside and not looked at. But this is 2 factions that keep using that traitor deck. Now, of course, the Tleilaxu, they have their face dancers. And at the end of every game turn, they can take one of their unrevealed face dancers, shuffle it back into the deck, and then draw a new one, hopefully getting a different or better leader. With the assassination, if Moritani is in a battle and they lose the battle, if they're holding a leader that was not used in that battle but belonging to the same faction, they can reveal that card, kill the leader, and get spice for it. And then, and the Mentat pause, they get to just draw a new traitor card And they can keep doing that, but they can only do it once per faction. So let's say that they reveal Lady Jessica in a battle where Atreides used Gurney Halleck. Atreides won that battle, but then the Moritani had Lady Jessica killed, and they're going to get 5 spice for her. And they're going to leave that Lady Jessica card face up. Now, she is no longer in the traitor deck and won't be for the rest of the game, which means that if she is revived, she is a leader that has no traitor card. And guess what? The Tleilaxu can make a Gola out of Lady Jessica. So it's a nice, safe leader, strong leader too, if you're lucky. But that means that if the Moritani draws another Atreides leader, they can no longer assassinate for the rest of the game. But then they'll have a traitor, so that can still use, let's say they draw Thufir or Dr. Yui, they can still call traitor on that. But then it's like a normal traitor for anybody else. And then they basically lose the assassinate leader's ability. So this one is tough to pull off in terms of getting to use it again and again. You can only use it once against each of the factions. But if they draw another leader of the same faction or they draw one of their own leaders, then they're basically done with the assassinate leader's ability. But it does involve them having to lose a battle. And that's, again, where the Tleilaxu come involved, because they can help them to get those forces back. They can raise the limits up to 5, and it's half price. So Moritani has 2 forces for free revival. They can get 3 more out for 3 spice. So that's pretty good. It's good for Moritani to be in an alliance with an economic faction. So that's another reason why the Tleilaxu make good partners for the Moritani. They've got a couple of ways they can get spice with their terror tokens, but they're certainly not an economic faction. So they're going to take some hits, but to being able to get their own leaders out for free, half price on their forces. And then with an economic faction, the Tleilaxu, they start off relatively poor, but as the longer the game goes on, the richer they're going to get. So that will enable them to be able to help Moritani buy treachery cards and pay for shipping. They can't pay for Moritani's revivals, but again, with the discount and being able to give them free leaders, I think it works out generally in the end. With the Moritani, they've got all these terror tokens that they're placing on the board, which really helps to, in most cases, to funnel players away from or to certain strongholds. And that can be really interesting. It's kind of a tough process to figure out, but if the Tleilaxu share some information with the Moritani about their face dancers, they can work together with the terror tokens to try to get to the point where the factions that have the face dancers are going to be the ones getting into battles. And if they're getting into battles with them, that also can work out as well. But it is possible to leverage those terror tokens as a way, as either as a deterrent by putting them into your own strongholds where that you occupy, so that other factions are afraid to come in there, or at least they're afraid to come in there with a lot of forces because they're really worried about atomics, for instance. And here, knowing that they're going to be able to get those forces out, they can put the atomics token basically anywhere they want. So that's really what it comes down to, is that, I know this feels a little bit one-sided, but again, with the Moritani, you want to play nice with them as their ally, because they can always get out of your alliance with their enemy of my enemy, and during shipping and movement form a better alliance with somebody else. But the Tleilaxu are pretty good. Again, that X factor of the face dancers is always a nice plan B, even though it doesn't come up as often as people are afraid it's going to come up. But again, if they're able to manipulate things in such a way that they say, yes, maybe I've got a couple of face dancers for one faction, or I've got a couple for the factions that are likely to get into battles, that increases their odds of being able to win that way as well. And what you want to do is you want to try to get into 4 strongholds, but see that the face dancers are in the other stronghold, or strongholds. Say, for instance, if you have the Ixians in the game, or you're using the Jackarudu Siege from Discovery tokens, it's possible to have multiple battles in strongholds that can possibly trigger a face dancer reveal, making it easier for you to have 4 strongholds at the end of the game turn. So that's what you're trying to do, trying to maneuver everyone and manipulate them in such a way that you can increase the likelihood that that's going to happen. Certainly, it gets easier as Moritani is able to assassinate leaders, and they do have an assassination terror token, which they can use to also assassinate another leader. And that's what the Tleilaxu want. They want to see factions get to the point where they've got very few leaders, especially if one of their surviving leaders is a face dancer. It just increases the chances that that's going to happen. They can, when they know that that's what's likely to happen, they can send in one force to lose the battle so that the face dancers can swoop in and take over for those surviving forces on the other side. So, Insidious Alliance, I love to see these two in the game, and if I'm playing one of these, I am predisposed personally to getting into the Deplorable Alliance because I think it's so deliciously evil. And that's really my approach to playing Dune, is I like the evil factions and I like to play evilly. So that's it for me. Let me know your thoughts on the Deplorable Alliance. What do you think of it? Have you seen it in action? Is it one that you've considered? As you start to see how many of these Power Alliance videos there are, and there are more coming, you see that just about any alliance has its potential to be a Power Alliance. And I think this is definitely one of them. But let me know what your thought, and share any stories of seeing this alliance in action, whether you were part of it or fighting against it. How did it do? What was it like? And was it fun? That's really what it's all about. It's about having fun. Even if you're going to lose, it's losing in a fun and terrifying way. That's it for this one, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.